I moved into this crappy little apartment complex a few months ago. It was this rundown 1970s looking place on the edge of the city. No elevator, weird smells lingering in the hallways like old smoke and mildew, peeling wallpaper in the stairwells, flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed annoyingly. But whatever, it was cheap, and more importantly, it was quiet. That's all I really wanted after a string of noisy roommates and chaotic living situations. The only downside, the one thing that grated on me, was my upstairs neighbor, Samantha. She was an older woman, probably in her late 50s or early 60s, with graying hair she always hid under scarves or hoods, and a face etched with lines that spoke of a hard life. She kept entirely to herself, never making eye contact, barely acknowledging anyone. Even when we'd cross paths on the narrow stairs, lugging groceries or trash, she'd avert her gaze and hurry past. She rarely left her apartment at all, and when she did, she was always bundled up in oversized coats and hats, like she was trying to disappear into the fabric, like she didn't want anyone to recognize her or remember her face. I figured she was just eccentric, maybe a recluse dealing with some mental health issues. A real basket case, as harsh as that sounds. Some nights, though, I'd hear her pacing around for hours, the floorboards creaking rhythmically above my head, back and forth like a caged animal. And often, mixed in with the pacing, she'd be whispering to herself, practicing lines over and over in this forced, breathy voice that carried faintly through the thin ceiling. You know you want me. I've been so bad. You know you want me. I've been so bad. I know you want me. I've been so bad. It wasn't seductive or alluring at all. Trust me, it didn't sound like that. It was just sad, desperate, like she was rehearsing for an audience that wasn't there, trying to convince herself she still had it, whatever it was. The repetition went sometimes until the early hours, echoing faintly, making it hard to sleep. Then one day, I overheard the landlord chatting with another tenant in the lobby, griping about late rent or something, and he mentioned her by name. Samantha's too old for that OnlyFans nonsense, he said with a scoff. Thinks she's gonna make bank posing in lingerie at her age? Pathetic. It took me a minute to connect the dots, the pacing, the lines, the reclusive behavior. She was trying to be a content creator, filming videos or photos for subscribers, probably in that dim apartment filled with whatever props she could afford. Anyway, fast forward to last month. It was a Thursday night around 11 p.m., and I'd just gotten home from a brutal late shift at work, exhausted, kicking off my shoes and collapsing on the couch with a box of cold pizza from the fridge. The TV was droning in the background, some mindless rerun, when suddenly I heard something upstairs that snapped me out of my daze. It wasn't the usual pacing or whispering. It sounded like a scream, sharp, guttural, but cut off abruptly in the middle, muffled like a hand had clamped over a mouth. Then, nothing. Dead silence. That silence was worse than noise. It hung there, heavy and unnatural, because I was so used to her constant sounds. I expected to hear more, footsteps, a thud, anything, but there was just this void. My gut twisted. Something felt deeply wrong, like the air in my apartment had shifted. Before I could brush it off as paranoia, there was a heavy thud right above me, vibrating through the ceiling, like a body hitting the floor hard. I froze, pizza slice halfway to my mouth, heart pounding. Maybe she dropped a piece of furniture, I told myself, or tripped over something in the dark. But that scream, no, that didn't fit. I grabbed my phone, slipped on my shoes quietly, and crept up the stairs to her floor, every step creaking under my weight, the hallway dimly lit by a single bulb that flickered like in a bad horror movie. The air up there smelled stronger, stale cigarettes mixed with something floral and cheap. Her door was ajar, not wide open, just cracked enough that a sliver of light spilled out, and through it, I could see her bare feet on the worn carpet inside. Pale and unnaturally still, toes pointed awkwardly. I hesitated, pulse racing, but pushed the door open slowly, the hinges groaning softly. The apartment was a mess, clothes strewn about, empty wine bottles on the table, a ring light set up in the corner with a tripod and a backdrop that looked like crumpled red sheets. And there she was, Samantha, lying on the floor in this garish red satin robe that had fallen open slightly, her mouth frozen open in what looked like a silent scream, eyes wide and glassy, staring at nothing. There was a weird bruise blooming on her throat, dark purple and fresh, finger-shaped marks that told a story I didn't want to hear. She was dead. No doubt about it. No breathing, no movement, just gone. I stood there in shock, the room spinning a little, the metallic tang of blood faint in the air. It took me a full minute to snap out of it and start dialing 911, fingers fumbling on the screen. And that's when I heard it, the toilet flushing from the bathroom down the short hallway. My heart literally stopped, blood pounding in my ears. Someone was still in there, with her, with the body. Panic surged through me. I couldn't run, couldn't scream. I swiftly ducked behind this crusty old couch just inside the living room, the fabric reeking of cheap perfume, cigarette ash, and something sour like spilled booze. I dropped flat to the floor, holding my breath, phone clutched tight, praying the shadows hid me. The bathroom door creaked open, followed by heavy footsteps, deliberate, unhurried, padding across the floor. Then the front door closed softly, almost gently, like whoever it was didn't want to alert the building. But they had no idea I was there, a third person witnessing it all. I peeked carefully over the armrest, just enough to see a pale, bald man in a wrinkled trench coat that looked like it'd seen better decades, his face gaunt and expressionless, eyes cold and vacant. He started humming this creepy tune, an off-key version of an Elvis Presley song. Wise men say, but I can't help falling in love with you. The notes were drawn out, mocking, sending chills down my spine. He slowly crouched beside her body, the floor creaking under his weight, and ran a gloved hand down her face tenderly, like she was still alive, like this was some twisted romantic moment. You lied to me, he murmured, voice low and accusatory. Said you were 20, acting like you were special, like you were mine. Then, from his coat pocket, he pulled out this small blade, not a kitchen knife, but a precise scalpel, glinting under the dim lamplight. My stomach churned. This was turning into a real-life horror movie, and I was trapped in the audience seat. What happened next will haunt me forever, robbing me of peaceful sleep for the rest of my life. He started cutting into her arm, at first with clean, shallow incisions, methodical, as if carving a pattern or initials into her skin. The wet, slicing sound of flesh parting made bile rise in my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm, silent. You thought you could make me want you again? He whispered bitterly, his breath ragged. Look at you now, skin sagging, makeup caking over the wrinkles, hiding everything. He chuckled under his breath, a hollow, unhinged sound, then added, I loved you when you were real, not when you became this pathetic joke. And with that, he stabbed the scalpel deep into her eye, twisting it slightly before pulling out the eyeball with a sickening pop, holding it up like it was a prize. I nearly vomited right there, clamping a hand over my mouth to stifle any sound, tears streaming down my face. My phone was out now, recording shakily from behind the couch with one hand, the other muffling my sobs. He kept slicing and mutilating her body, deeper cuts across her limbs, her torso, talking to her the whole time like she could hear him, like she was responding. You begged me to come back, remember? Said you'd do anything for me. And now look at you, just lying there useless, like all the others before you. His voice was conversational, almost loving in its delusion. I was shaking so violently my phone nearly slipped, the video blurring. Finally he stood up, wiping the scalpel on his coat. Still humming that awful Elvis tune as he walked toward the kitchen, rummaging for something, maybe to clean up, maybe to take a trophy. That was my chance. I crawled backward on my elbows and knees, inch by inch, heart hammering, until I reached the door. I slipped out gently, pulling it almost shut behind me, then bolted down the stairs 2 at a time, nearly tripping in my panic. Bursting into my apartment, I slammed the door and called 911, choking out the words through tears and hysteria. Dead body, intruder, murder, please hurry. The cops arrived in under 5 minutes, sirens wailing faintly in the distance before they screeched to a stop outside. They stormed up with guns drawn, flashlights cutting through the dark hallway. I heard shouting, a scuffle, then him being dragged out screaming and laughing maniacally, covered head to toe in her blood, his eyes wild like a demon's. I handed over the footage, still trembling. The officers didn't even flinch, just nodded grimly and thanked me, like they'd seen this exact nightmare play out too many times before. Later, piecing it together from the news and what the detectives told me, the guy was one of Samantha's most avid followers on OnlyFans. An obsessed fan she'd blocked months earlier after he flooded her with disturbing, threatening messages. He had a long rap sheet: assault, breaking and entering, multiple stalking charges that the system had dismissed or downplayed as minor. He'd been hiding in her apartment since earlier that day, waiting in the shadows for her to let her guard down, to punish her for not being the perfect youthful fantasy he'd built in his warped mind anymore. I haven't slept much since that night. The images replay in my head, the sounds, the smell. I moved out the very next week, crashing with a friend until I found somewhere new. Sometimes, in the quiet, I still hear his voice humming that Elvis song while he cut her apart. I wonder how many other women he'd done this to before Samantha. How many fantasies he'd shattered violently. But most of all, I wonder what would have happened if I'd gone upstairs just 5 minutes earlier, if I'd walked in on him in the act, if I'd been next. So this happened about 7 months ago, and I'm only talking about it now because I'm still trying to process the trauma, still unpacking the layers of fear and violation it left behind. I had just started an OnlyFans account, nothing too wild or explicit, just lingerie photos, teasing poses, suggestive captions. It was empowering at first, fun even. The attention rolled in, compliments flooding my DMs, tips adding up quickly, and yeah, the money was a nice boost, helping with rent and little luxuries I couldn't afford otherwise. I was in a long-term relationship with this guy named Reed. We'd been together almost 2 years, comfortable, or so I thought. Movie nights, shared inside jokes, plans for the future. From the second I told him about the page, though, he was against it, visibly unhappy. His face would tighten, and he'd launch into lectures. "This isn't you, babe. You don't need validation from a bunch of random creeps online." He'd warned me constantly about the dangers, painting these vivid pictures of doom. "One day, some psycho is going to track you down, show up at our door. Mark my words, this is a mistake." I brushed it off every time. I was careful. No face in some shots, no location tags, no personal details. Plus, it's 2025. Women are allowed to own their sexuality, feel confident online, monetize their image if they want, right? It wasn't like I was naive. I knew the risks, but the pros outweighed them, or so I believed. Anyway, one night we were driving back from my friend's birthday party, laughing about old stories, music blasting, when we pulled over at this sketchy, abandoned-looking gas station off the highway, the kind with flickering neon signs and cracked pavement, isolated under a starry but eerie sky. It was past midnight, the air cool and still. Reed went inside to grab an energy drink and some cigarettes while I stayed in the car, scrolling through my phone, checking DMs from subscribers. A lot were trash, crude requests, unsolicited pics, but a few loyal ones were sweet, respectful even, making me smile. I was totally engrossed, head down, when a shadow fell over the window. I looked up and nearly screamed. A man standing inches from the glass, staring in. He was filthy, mud-caked pants splattered with dirt, a tangled dreadlock beard matted with who knows what, cracked lips twisted into a vacant grin, eyes bloodshot and unfocused like his mind had fractured long ago. Pure dread hit me. I lunged for the lock button, clicking it just in time. He started tapping on the window, tap, 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 persistent, unblinking. "Go away," I yelled, voice cracking, but he just smiled wider, yellowed teeth flashing. Then he pulled out his phone, held it up to the glass, my OnlyFans page, my latest post glowing on the screen. Ice flooded my veins. My eyes darted to the store entrance, willing Reed to come back. The guy started rambling, voice muffled but audible through the glass. "It's really you, the angel from the screen. Can I touch your hair, please? Just one touch." I screamed louder, honked the horn in frantic bursts, the sound piercing the night. He pressed his dirty hands against the window, smearing grime like he was caressing me through the barrier. "I knew you'd be prettier in person," he crooned, eyes gleaming with delusion. I was on the verge of full breakdown, tears blurring my vision, when Reed finally sprinted out of the store, bags dropping as he charged. I've never seen him move that fast. He tackled the guy hard in the parking lot, fists flying, knocking him to the ground. I heard the sickening cracks as he punched, blood spraying, at least 3 teeth scattering across the asphalt. We sped off, tires screeching, me sobbing uncontrollably in the passenger seat, explaining everything through hiccups. Reed was breathing heavy, knuckles split and bleeding, veins bulging in his neck. "See, I told you this would happen," he said, voice tight with anger and vindication. That night, back home, I deleted the account without a second thought, just gone. I felt exposed, violated, like my body wasn't mine anymore, like I'd been stripped naked for the world and then shoved into the dirt. The compliments that once boosted me now felt tainted. I questioned everything, my worth, my choices, why I thought I needed that attention. It was the worst night of my life, hands down. For weeks after, I was a wreck, jumping at shadows, barely sleeping, replaying those mad eyes in my nightmares, how he looked at me like I belonged to him, like I was property he could claim. Reed was supportive on the surface, holding me, making tea, but he kept reminding me, subtly at first, then not. Imagine if I hadn't come out when I did. What would he have done? Now you see why I didn't want you doing that stuff. And honestly, guilt crept in. I felt grateful he saved me, like yeah, maybe he was right all along. Maybe I'd invited the danger by putting myself out there. A month or so later, Reed was at work, and I was bored, cleaning out our cluttered junk drawer in the kitchen. Old receipts, tangled cables, random junk mail piling up. Looking for a spare charger, I dug deeper and found it. An old beat-up prepaid flip phone, hidden under expired coupons, and a dead flashlight, like it had been stashed deliberately. Curiosity got me. I flipped it open, surprised it still had battery. No contacts, just a handful of texts from one unsaved number. One jumped out immediately. "Are you sure this is just to scare her? I don't want any cops on my ass." My heart dropped like a stone. Another, "Cash App didn't go through. Need 50 more for bus fare." Hands shaking, I scrolled further. Then the one that shattered everything. "Wait until she's alone in the car. Show her the OnlyFans page. Just scare her a little. Make it real. I need her to quit." Dated 2 days before the gas station. My mouth went dry, the room spinning. It was Reed's instructions. That psycho wasn't a random obsessed sub. He was hired, paid to terrify me. My own boyfriend staged the whole nightmare to prove his point, to force me to delete the account. And then he swooped in as the hero, rescuing me from the monster he unleashed. Also, he could say "I told you so" and feel justified. I went cold, numb, couldn't breathe. Why? Why would someone who claimed to love me orchestrate something so cruel, so potentially deadly? The manipulation hit like a truck. He played on my fear, my gratitude to control me. I packed my bags that afternoon while he was still at work, left no note, no confrontation, just gone. Changed my number, blocked him everywhere, vanished like a ghost. I still wonder, what if the guy had gone too far? If Reed's actor had escalated, if the plan spiraled out of control and I ended up hurt, or worse. I haven't posted anything online since, not even a selfie on Instagram. Therapy's helping untangle the betrayal, the gaslighting, but some nights I wake up terrified. That man knew my name, knew details. He said I'd be prettier in person. Was that scripted? Did Reed tell him to say that? It chills me to realize the real stalker wasn't the stranger at the window. It was the one sleeping next to me, pretending to protect me. We used to be that inseparable duo. You know, Marn and Juliet, ride or die best friends since middle school. Sleepovers every weekend filled with gossip and junk food, matching friendship bracelets we swore we'd wear forever, inside jokes that left us in stitches while everyone else stared confused. We shared everything. Secrets, clothes, dreams. But like so many high school friendships, ours crashed and burned spectacularly. And if I'm being completely honest, yeah, I was the one who struck the match and watched it ignite. It was junior year, and there was this guy, Tyler, the tall, charismatic soccer team captain with perfect abs, tousled hair, and that effortless smile that made my stomach flip. He was the reason I'd accidentally walk by the football field after class, hoping for a glance. I never told Juliet how deep my crush ran. I was saving it, waiting for the perfect moment to confess and maybe get her wingwoman help. But one Friday night at Jamie's basement party, Music thumping, red Solo cups everywhere, the air thick with teen sweat and cheap vodka, everything shattered. Juliet got messy drunk, laughing too loud, stumbling around. Next thing I know, someone's yelling across the room, "Juliet just kissed Tyler!" Right in the middle of truth or dare, lips locked in front of everyone, his hands on her waist like it was natural. It felt like a knife twisting in my back, betrayal burning hot. Even though I hadn't spelled it out, she knew. She had to know. I liked him. We talked about him in passing, giggled over his pics. Later, hungover and apologetic, she tried to justify it. It didn't mean anything, Marn. I barely remember. It was just the game. But all I saw was her looking thrilled, like she'd won a prize I was secretly chasing. I smiled and said it was fine, but inside, rage festered. I wasn't always this bitter, this vengeful, but something snapped that night. A switch flipped from hurt to hatred. A week later, nursing my grudge, I started messing around with AI image generators online, just for fun at first, creating silly edits. It didn't take long to realize how realistic I could make fakes, uploading old selfies from Juliet's Instagram, ones she'd forgotten about, candid and innocent, then using deepfake tools and plugins to morph them, changing clothes to barely there lingerie, posing her body in explicit scenarios she'd never touch in real life, sprawled on beds, provocative angles, but with her face perfectly intact, every freckle and detail spot on. It looked real, terrifyingly so. Then I went nuclear, created a fake OnlyFans profile with a burner email, username something slutty, bio reading "I'll do anything for money." Uploaded the deepfakes as exclusive content, priced subscriptions low to lure clicks. I shared the link anonymously in our school's biggest group chat. No name, no explanation, just the link and a fire emoji. By morning, it spread like wildfire. Screenshots circulated, laughs echoed in hallways. By lunch the next day, everyone had seen it or heard about it. The boys were merciless, whistling when she walked by, waving crumpled bills in her face, catcalling, "How much for the girlfriend experience?" or worse. Juliet looked devastated, pale and trembling, like she might vomit right there in the cafeteria. She didn't confront me, didn't accuse, just withdrew, eyes hollow. By last period, she was gone. Skipped class, didn't answer texts, vanished from socials. Didn't make it home, apparently crashed at some relatives or just hid out. I told myself she deserved it, that this was poetic justice for stealing my crush, for betraying me. But deep down, even then, guilt gnawed, a crawling, uncomfortable regret that I'd crossed a line into cruelty. That night, alone in my room, I scrolled through DMs from classmates hyping the mystery drop, laughing about how epic it was. It fed my ego, made me feel powerful, in control. I was too invested to back out, too addicted to the revenge high. Then, a soft creak outside my door snapped me out of it. My bedroom door was half open. I always closed it fully, paranoid about that sort of thing. Rain pattered against the windows, thunder rumbling distantly. I froze, listening. Another creak closer. And there she was, Juliet, standing in the doorway like a ghost from a nightmare, drenched from the storm outside, hair plastered to her face, clothes soaking and dripping puddles on the carpet. Her eyes, they glowed almost in the dim light from my phone screen, wild and unhinged, nothing like the sweet girl I knew. As my gaze traveled down, terror gripped me. A kitchen knife clutched in her right hand, blade gleaming. I clutched my bedsheets, heart slamming against my ribs. This had to be a dream, a hallucination from guilt. I forced a nervous laugh. "Hey, what are you doing here, Jules?" She didn't answer, just stepped into the room, water squishing from her jeans with each movement, lips trembling but grip on the knife rock steady. She raised it absently, scratching her head with the tip, too hard, drawing blood that trickled down, mixing with the rain. "You thought that was funny, huh?" she whispered, voice raw and broken. "Look, I didn't know it would," I started, but she cut me off. "You knew very well." No time to react. She lunged, slamming into me, and we crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs. The knife swung down wildly, her face twisted in pure violence and disdain, tears streaming but eyes burning with hate. I caught her wrist inches from my throat, the blade nicking my shoulder instead, hot blood soaking through my hoodie instantly. We thrashed, screaming, me in terror, her in rage, rolling across the room, knocking over my dresser, lamp shattering in a crash of glass. She was stronger than I expected, fueled by betrayal. She grabbed my right hand, pinning it, raising the knife high. I saw my death in her wide, horrifying eyes. "Please, Jules, stop. I'm sorry." She didn't. The blade came down fast, slicing through my knuckles with a crackling snap of bone. Agonizing pain exploded, numbness following like fire and ice. In my blurring vision, she held up my severed index finger like a trophy, hysterical laughter bubbling out amid sobs. I was fading, blood pooling when my dad burst in, alerted by the screams. He took one look, blood everywhere, Juliet wielding the knife, and lost it completely, tackling her off me like a linebacker, pinning her down as she kicked and thrashed, reaching for the blade again. He roared for Mom to call 911, holding her until cops arrived, sirens wailing closer. Juliet went limp eventually, defeat washing over her as cuffs clicked on. I was rushed to the ER, finger gone forever, shoulder gashed deep, psyche shattered. In the hospital, high on pain meds but clear enough, I confessed everything to the police. The deep fakes, the fake profile, the revenge plot. No point lying. They didn't charge me, self-defense on my end, technically the victim of her attack. But school expelled me swiftly, reputation in ruins. My parents, they look at me differently now, disappointment etched in their eyes, trust fractured. It's been 5 months. Therapy helps a little, but I still wake up sweating, hearing that creak at the door, feeling the cold blade on my skin, seeing her rain-soaked face twisted in madness. Revenge felt sweet for a moment, but it cost me everything. My finger, my friend, my sense of self. And sometimes I wonder if that guilt will ever fully fade, or if she's out there somewhere, haunted just like me.